Hey, everybody. Thanks for popping on this morning. I am Sarah Nielsen, your Director of Sales, and I'm super excited today because we have a very special guest. As you guys know, Kevin Thompson, he is our FTC attorney, one of the many attorneys that Green Compass works with regularly, has agreed to come on and just talk to you guys a little bit about the landscape of what's going on in the industry right now, where Green Compass is positioned, and why it is so important that we stay compliant. I know that you guys probably get sick of hearing from us about just like compliance, but every time we do anything, we push this through Kevin and his office. So everything that goes on in our communication and all of our packaging and all of our videos, everything that you guys see has to run through our attorneys first to make sure that it's compliant. And that's to protect you, to protect our customers, and ultimately to protect our brand and Green Compass. So thank you, Kevin, for popping on with us. I'm going to manage, if anybody has a really burning question, type it in the chat. And then at the end, when Kevin's done, if there's time, I might be able to go through and ask some of those questions for you. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Kevin. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. And thank you for having me here with your group. It's an honor for me. And I've been told I have between 2.5 hours. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. I think what is it? 30 minutes?
We have about an hour, so take as much as you need. I'm sure they'll be
Okay.
excited to hear.
All right. Perfect. And for your audience, I do like Q&A. So there'll be a segment here where, Sarah, you can look through the chats and kind of feed me questions, and I can sort of address whatever's on your field's mind. But let's start. Okay, Kevin Thompson, our firm is Thompson Burton. We're based out of Nashville, Tennessee. I've been doing this for close to 15 years. People always ask, how did you get into this profession? How did you get into this industry? What happened? And it goes back to when I was an undergrad and got introduced to a company, and I did anything I could to make extra money. I was actually a college athlete, not on a full scholarship. I needed some extra scratch, and I was selling energy drinks to bars. And just back in those days, I fell in love with the concept. I got it. If you move product, you get paid. If you don't move product, you don't get paid. Doesn't matter who your mom is, who your dad is. Doesn't matter how you look, young, old. Doesn't matter anything. What matters is production. And that really spoke to me. And it's very similar to the event that I did in college, which was a long time ago. And it was decathlon, right? So it's 10 events over 2 days. Some of you guys remember Brian Clay, maybe. Some of you guys know Dan and Dave, the old Reebok commercials. It gets kind of awkward when I talk about Bruce Jenner and Caitlyn Jenner, but those are some of the more famous decathletes. Decathlon is you have 10 events over 2 days. You run fast, you jump high, you get more points. At the end of 10 events, all your points are, all your scores are tabulated on the scoring table, and it's all added up. You do better than everybody else, you win. You don't do as well, you lose. Very simple. Network marketing is the same. And so I love the concept. I love working with crazy entrepreneurs that are trying to introduce unique products and services into the marketplace. That's fun for me. There's an energy to this profession that I really like on all levels. I enjoy working with founders, people that are just tinkering and putting things together, like your founders, Sterling and Brooks, two great people that I enjoy working with, and the whole team that they've assembled. It's fun for me. I enjoy learning about the product categories. I've been learning about CBD since 2014, back when my first reaction was the same as what you guys are experiencing. Well, isn't this illegal, right? The whole hemp thing. And of course, a lot has changed, and a lot of education has come out. And so we've been following this space for 6 years, although it's been around longer than that. So I love learning about products, and I also like interacting with field leaders. I really respect what you all are doing, the people on this call. I don't know really anybody on the call, but I do know something about each of you. And that is, you guys are investing time to try to learn something that you can hopefully turn into additional income later. And I've got massive appreciation and respect for that. That makes you different. That makes you a top 1%er by itself. And I'm drawn to people that try to take responsibility in their own hands and just do what they can to make things happen. And even if, whether they're successful or they're not successful, the fact that there's energy and effort, for me, it's fun. All right, so let's dive in here and cover some content. Trying to screen out the questions here. This question goes, methods change, but principles do not. Right, and so there's a lot changing right now economically, and I'm not here to talk about trends in the economy and COVID and what's happening. It's chaotic. I mean, we're all living through it. There are very few people unaffected by what's happening out there. Whether you own a business or you're employed by a business, the reality is there's just less money circulating in the economy. And while that is sort of different, the fundamental principles are the same. If you're a person of value, if you add value, you're going to find a way to do well and come out of this thing better than when you went in. Now, by nature of me working with lots of different companies over the years, I've been doing this for a very long time. And I've seen beautiful companies and I've seen absolute train wrecks. I've seen incompetent owners with good products screw it up. I've seen good owners with bad products make things work. And I've just seen a chemistry of all sorts in this profession. And what sticks out, essentially, I've developed sort of a sense for what separates the good companies from the not so good companies. And basically it boils down to, there's a lot of factors, but I boil it down to 3 for purposes of a 30 to 45 minute talk. And those 3 principles start with the first, which will always be the first. It was the first 15 years ago and it's the first today, and that's leadership. You can have beautiful product and great branding, and you can have beautiful software and compensation plan design and all these things. But if you've got incompetent or corrupt leadership, the company doesn't do well. Because leadership, it's challenging to get so many people on the boat rowing in the same direction. And there's tension there, right? It can be adversarial between people on the boat as far as how to get where and how fast to go and what direction to go. And leadership is an art. Also, there are countless relationships to manage for any sort of company, right? There's office space, there's manufacturing, there's marketing, which like Sarah does, there's compliance, there's, in this case, there's FDA, there's a lot of moving pieces. And if any one of those pieces falls through the cracks, you could have trouble. And so leadership's important. And my experience with your leadership team has been good. Sterling and Brooks have been very approachable. They've been very coachable. And humility in my profession is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. And these guys are not afraid to ask questions, which is one thing that I appreciate. And also, I measure founders by the questions that they don't ask, right? It's frequent, as you can imagine, being an attorney, I get asked all the time, what can I get away with? Right? What I know it's illegal, but what are the odds, right? And they sort of put together this algorithm in their head, this risk reward thing. And I haven't had that sort of problem with your founder. So leadership is absolutely crucial. Well, and you guys are asking, well, but why are you talking about leadership? You're a lawyer. Your job is compliance. I'm going to get there, but compliance doesn't matter if the leadership is toxic. Right? If the leadership is all about push, 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 and cheat, doesn't matter what you do on the compliance side. So, check the box there. That is good. You guys are in good shape in that regard. The second thing that separates the good companies from the ones that don't make it, and this is common sense, but common sense is not so common, it's unique product. Right? So it's not hard to contact a manufacturer and private label a Me Too product. Some skincare product that does something, or whatever. You want the product to be positioned in a way where the market is pulling it from your hand. And CBD has been a growing space for years. Companies that it's almost like if you throw a dart out in the wild, as long as you don't hit a person, you're going to make money. CBD is that product category where people are intrigued by it, but they don't know a lot about it. And that's the function of you. You have to tell that story. That's the main point of the compensation plan, is to pay people like yourselves to tell the story with integrity, to tell the story properly, and to create value behind the product, explain the product, because there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of misunderstanding about CBD. That misunderstanding is your opportunity, right? You do not want to be selling travel today, okay? It's not a very popular segment. And the reality is, when it comes to travel, and I've had a number of travel clients, and when there's travel programs that offer serious discounts, there's value there. But the idea of traveling, people don't need to be sold on that. They sort of get it. Here with CBD, right, they need to know the do's and don'ts and the benefits of it, and the how to properly do it, how to not do it, and all those things, and the science behind it, what makes it unique, what makes it pure. So product is absolutely vital. Now, everybody's been asked the question, I'm sure, and if you haven't, it's coming. Is this one of those pyramid scheme things? And so now this is where, as a lawyer, I jump in and give you something to write down. Because you, as a professional, you need to be educated on any sort of objection that's going to come at you. So what is it? What is a pyramid? Well, pyramids are illegal, obviously. And if I were to boil the ocean, and there's 40 years, 1974, so there's close to 40 years of case law history regarding this subject. And to boil all that history down, pyramiding is when you pay rewards unrelated to product sales. All right, excuse me for 1 second. I had to clear my throat there. It's when you pay rewards unrelated to product sales. All right, what does that mean? Well, obviously, if we have what's called an airplane game, and I tell Sarah to give me $10, and she has to recruit 3 people to give her $10, and I get $5, and it's just money moving around. Well, clearly rewards are being paid unrelated to product sales. The movement of money is not a product. Well, suppose we sell, I'm looking at my desk here, first thing I see measuring tape. All right, 25-foot measuring tape, probably worth, I don't know, $6. We're gonna sell this for $1,000 in our plan and pay commissions on the sale of this product for $1,000. Is that a product sale? Regulators would say, no, it's not. You're trying to fake them out. And so what do regulators want to see? They want to see value. Okay, well, how do they prove value? The main metric, and what is it within your control, is they want to see customer sales, right? Are people that are not in your downline purchasing the product? Can you successfully sell this to customers? I call it the grandma test. If you can't sell it to your grandmother, assuming she's alive or he's alive, mine or not, but if you can sell it to a grandparent with a straight face, you got a good product. Excuse me. And so, goodness. And so customer sales are vital when regulators are measuring the value of a product. Back to my measuring tape example, we sell this for $1,000. We can build a scam. We can recruit people to buy the measuring tape who can recruit more people to buy the measuring tape. Not a real product. You're not going to have real customer sales. That's vital. And what else do regulators look for? Well, they look for compliance, right? Does the company talk about selling to customers? Well, I'm doing it now. So that's important. They look at other factors such as the emphasis of the pitch. You know, in the industry, I guess 20 years ago, the model was recruit people and just teach them to buy for themselves and recruit more people to buy for themselves. Now it's really important to expand the network and generate a lot of customer volume. Number one, customer volume is very sticky. So your customers tend to stay longer. And it's really good for profitability for a business. And so product sales, customer sales, very important. If you don't have the right product, you're not going to have the customer sales. My understanding is you guys are moving customer volume in meaningful quantities. That's a good thing. The third thing, right, that separates good companies from the not so good companies. And it's, well, before I tell you what it is, I'm gonna tell you a story about Paul O'Neill, who was the Secretary of the Treasury for George Bush Sr. And Paul O'Neill recently passed away 2 weeks, within the past month, let's say. But for a while, he was Secretary of the Treasury, which is Steve Mnuchin's current position. And before that, he was a CEO of a publicly traded company, Alcoa Aluminum. And on the first day on the job as CEO, he was giving a speech to shareholders, which CEOs do for publicly traded companies. And his message was, I'm going to focus on one thing. And what do you think that thing was? I mean, think to yourself. You're CEO of a publicly traded company. You're about to give a speech to shareholders. What do you think that one thing would be? All right, you got it locked in your mind. Okay. He didn't talk about profit margins. He didn't talk about international expansion. He didn't talk about efficiencies. He didn't talk about servicing debts. He said the one thing is safety, worker safety. Well, of course, people's minds were blown. How are we going to make money with a CEO that focuses on safety? That makes no sense. How does safety translate into earnings per share, profitability? And so there's a massive sell-off and the stock went down. But of course, under his leadership, the stock exploded in value. And the reason is because that one hyper focus on safety, it's what's called a keystone habit. It's a centerpiece of, popular in cathedrals, where if you pull it, the whole structure collapses. So it's a centerpiece of the business. So what is safety? How is that a keystone piece? Well, labor certainly appreciated it. And it increased communication between labor and management, which led to improvements in the machinery, which somehow increased output. It led to less litigation because there was fewer injuries. And it led to fewer workers' compensation claims. It led to more time on the job, improved morale. Everybody was happy. It just led to a dramatic increase in production for that company. That safety. Think about that, just on safety. In this industry, that's the third thing that's critical, that's oftentimes underappreciated. It's compliance. And the C word is not very popular. It's the sales avoidance team is usually the compliance team. But by focusing on compliance, excuse me for a second here, making sure none of the founders are texting me, telling me to stop talking. Hasn't happened yet. Focusing on compliance, it's good for business because number one, the market expects it, right? We're sort of trained to psychologically expect compliance, disclosures, restraint. You can't look at a commercial on television without there being an ocean of disclosures. In fact, if you don't see disclosures and they're talking about some magic pill, you wonder, right? Your alarm bells go off. So compliance is a way to signal trust or being trustworthy. Compliance means it's the company is taking measures to protect the long-term health of the business. Anybody can cheat and say that their product can regrow missing limbs, right? Or their product can cure cancer, right? It's easy to cheat and push out a message and make money short-term, but it is a very short-term sugar high where the company eventually collapses due to litigation and regulators and whatnot. So in our profession, compliance really boils down to a lot, but for purpose of this talk, we're going to talk about two things. Number one, income claims. So what is an income claim? An income claim is where you talk about the income potential, which is perfectly legal to talk about. As you're out there recruiting is a legal thing. You got to sell products, but you can recruit, you can expand the network. And as you're recruiting, you have to explain the upside. Well, there's three types of income claims. There's hypotheticals, where if you do X, you can earn Y. There's specific earnings, like here's my check. It's my check. I earned $5,000 in April. And then there's, this is really more artistic than it is scientific. It's lifestyle. It's taking a picture by a nice car and saying, thanks to Green Compass, I can now drive. I now paid cash for my new Chevy or something. Those are examples of income claims. Well, it's important that as you're presenting the opportunity, not to exaggerate the potential. I mean, the potential is big. Your plan allows for bigger incomes. Okay, that's a fact, but that is not a typical result. And so in advertising, you can't point to the outliers and sort of present a message that implies that these examples are typical. Think about the weight loss commercials that you see, right? I lost 50 pounds in a month. Well, then you have disclosures that say, well, hey, these results aren't typical. The average person that takes our product loses about a pound a week, right? That's an example. So be careful with those outlier examples. Also, something the company is working on is developing what's called an income disclosure statement, where the average earnings are presented in a document. That way, as you're making claims about the income opportunity, you can then present the income disclosure statement, which is a very important step when you're talking about money. So be on the lookout for that. But the most important message is don't exaggerate. And think about this. This is something that's interesting to me. Hopefully it's interesting for you. Sorry, my allergies are bugging me. I picked the worst time to have my son cut the grass during a Zoom talk. So think about the gig economy 2 months ago, before it just got obliterated. The gig economy somehow accumulated 50 million participants. Many of you folks here participated in that thing and still do, right? Airbnb, Lyft, Uber, DoorDash, you name it. People were willing to do some work in exchange for some money. 50 million participants. Now in our industry, there's only about 6 million participants. So we've been around longer. Why the difference? Well, the difference is there was an ocean of need for people looking to make a few $100 a month. That's it. People driving an Uber, they're not trying to get rich for the most part. Some are doing it as a job, but for the most part, they're not. And so those income claims actually, sometimes as they get really big, might actually intimidate some people. So keep that in mind, and that's a message for your marketing team to educate you on how to properly do that. The other thing that's really important when it comes to compliance in this profession that really separates the good from the not so good is the health claims. And this is big when it comes to CBD. CBD, it's an ocean of opportunity because there's a lot of ignorance in the market, and that's the value that you provide. You help cure that ignorance. You teach people about it. But there's a downside to CBD in that there's an ocean of content online that even assuming it's a credible source. CBD cures cancer. I don't know if that exists, but let's just hypothetically say this CBD has been shown to cure cancer. Or my favorite claim that I've seen, it can resurrect dead animals. I've actually seen that claim before. Dog died. They had some CBD droplets and it sprang to life. It's amazing. Okay, so that content is out there. Just because it's out there doesn't mean you can say it. And here's the rule. My job is to give you the rules, not so much my opinions. I'm not going to comment on whether I think these rules are fair or not. It is what it is. The FDA says you can make what's called structure function claims, which, okay, what is a structure function claim? It's a claim about a supplement's ability to enhance a bodily function. That's it. Very simple. Take this vitamin and it can enhance, it can help support an immune system. Okay, very simple. So long as, right, so you can make structure function claims, so long as you do not encroach into disease territory. You cannot imply that your product can treat, prevent, or cure a disease, ever. So what is a disease? Well, a disease is really broadly defined as any serious bodily impairment. Common cold is a disease. The coronavirus is a disease. And so suggesting that your product can treat or prevent a disease is a problem. And so that's where a lot of people get frustrated and say, well, what can we say? Because there's all these blog articles that talk about CBD and COVID. Well, the FTC has made it very clear, and that they have spoken louder than they normally do. Normally, it's like tea leaves. You know, they send signals in the wind, and you have to interpret it based on the politics of the situation and the environment and the economy, which we're pretty good at. That's what we do for a living. Here, they're very specific. They sent 10 warning letters to companies in our industry, not Green Compass, but other companies, and made it very clear that you cannot commingle. And this is very important for you guys to understand this. You cannot commingle COVID with any sort of marketing material. It's not my opinion, it's just the facts. And so how is that done? Well, take our product to better position yourself to fight COVID, right? Or people on our product don't get COVID. This is even true with income claims, where, hey, during the pandemic, while people are working from home, it's really hard, but make sure that whatever message that you, especially with Facebook posts, you don't commingle the message with the lockdown and with quarantine. Because there was a skincare company, a very innocuous product, where they made some aggressive income claims and hashtag quarantined, hashtag lockdown, and that was flagged. I'm not trying to scare you guys, and the reality is not usually, all the time, the FTC, they're not going to pursue a company based on some like innocent mistakes made by the field. The company is expected to educate the field on what to do and what not to do. That's why we're here, and to make sure that people are staying in line. So back to the principle. You can't reference diseases, but you can talk about improvements to a physical state. Helps maintain cholesterol levels already within the normal ranges, assuming that's true. Helps support a healthy immune system. Helps support a general sense of well-being. Helps with general aches and pains. You can't say arthritis. Arthritis is a disease. Those are some examples. So be careful with the message that you're pushing out there, and you guys will be just fine. And I have a note here in bold: do not say coronavirus, or any derivative thereof. Compliance, it's one of those things where, if done right, it builds trust. And as trust builds, the value of your company's brand builds. All right, so take Apple, for example. Okay, I just spent like $200 on a stupid keyboard, okay, for my iPad. Not because I wanted one. I didn't know I wanted one. But they push it out, and I trust the brand. I trust when they say this will make the user experience better. I trust them. That trust has accumulated over decades. And so they're able to push things to market much faster than your average company. And companies in our industry, people, they have to trust you before they do business with you. And in order for them to trust you, you've got to do things right. You've got to build with integrity. You've got to have those income claims under control. You've got to make sure that you're properly representing the product appropriately and not aggressively talking about diseases, which with CBD is hard because there's all this content online that you sort of need to unsee, which I understand is very difficult. But building with integrity is how you distinguish yourself in the marketplace, and how Green Compass is going to build its brand over time. As you know what, it's hard. We have competitors that are cheating, but we're not going to do that. And then over time, it has a compounding effect where, as that trust builds, the value builds, and then your businesses will grow as a result of that. So I don't know. I've been talking for a while, and hey, Sarah.
Hi.
Uh, I always end it with a quote. All right. So it's Ernest Shackleton. He was an explorer back in the 1800s, and he said, "Life is the greatest of all games. The danger lies in treating it as trivial, where the rules don't matter much." And he says, in fact, the rules matter a great deal. Winning is not the chief end. Winning well is the chief end. And my challenge to the people on the call here is just do things as best you can. Nobody expects perfection. This company offers a lot of grace for people. They do what they can to teach people, but build with integrity, and over the long haul, you guys will benefit.
Awesome. I have some questions that I'm reading from the comments. So is it cool if I just ask you a couple direct questions that you can answer for these guys?
Rattle it off.
Okay.
Sure.
So the first thing is that one of I think the points of confusion for our field is when they're talking about medical claims, they're coming at it as a medical claim being something like saying, CBD cures, or, something really, really blatant. And so
say arthritis. That's a popular one.
Yeah, arthritis. And by the way that I teach them to define a medical claim is anything that's diagnosed, right? So I think in their mind, when they're hearing disease, they're thinking something specific, like someone mentioned, well, menopause isn't a disease, but it is something that's a diagnosis, right? So saying CBD will treat or help with the, effects of or whatever menopause is still a medical claim, or no?
I'm really glad you brought up that example, because that's one of the few cases where actually you can make the claim, because menopause is considered a normal condition of life,
Mm-hmm.
which I think I might be mistaken on the technical term, but it's a normal life stage. And if your product helps with that, you can make the claim. So
Okay.
it's not really considered a disease. You can talk about general pain associated with aging. That's fine. You can't talk about chronic pain. So menopause and monthly cycle deals, you can talk about that, which surprised me when I first saw that.
Okay, that's great. I'm glad I asked that too.
Yeah.
Okay, so what they're struggling with is, because there's some conflicting information that they've heard, out and about, is when they're talking about a personal testimonial, right? If they're posting something like, this is my own experience with this particular thing, let's just go back to arthritis. CBD has helped, lessen my, pain, or CBD's helped me through whatever. I think that there's a confusion upon making a general claim about a condition or a diagnosis or disease, and what is my personal testimonial, and what can I say in that realm. We want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah, that's a big one, and I need to make that part of my normal content. So it breaks my heart to say this, because people want to share their story, and usually when they do experience a tremendous benefit, they want to go to the rooftops and put their hands in the air and talk about it. Here's the challenge and the rule. Back to income claims. If I were to show you a check for $5,000, okay, it's my check, true story. The FTC, how they operate, is they assume that the person seeing that message will think it's an average result. Now, you and I probably won't. We're not stupid. The FTC, they assume that everybody's kind of dumb. But that's how they operate. So the person that sees the message will assume that it's an average result. Okay, which means you have to have income disclosures. You have to show an average. So this is an above average result. Here's the average. The average person, just like the weight loss example. Okay, I lost 50 pounds in a month. The average person loses a pound a week. All right. So yes, if somebody experienced let's say their arthritis feels tremendously better, it does not mean that they can make the claim, because anything that somebody in the field says, it's treated as if the company said it, right? And if the company cannot talk about arthritis, people in the field cannot either, even if it's their own personal testimonial. And the FTC has given specific examples on this subject. In fact, in the letters they pushed out a week from Friday, they made that very clear, where we are going to hold you accountable for what your people say. So sadly, and I'm not saying I agree with this. I think First Amendment protections people should say whatever the hell they want to say personally, and then the market sorts it out if it's good or not. But that's, my opinion isn't the law. And the law says that you can't make those testimonials. Customers can. I mean, customers can say whatever they want. They're not attached to the company. But the company wouldn't be able to grab those testimonials and then share them.
Okay, so I hope that you guys are hearing what he just said, that we can't take a customer testimonial and post it on our Facebook, even though we technically didn't say it. It's still as if we said it because we are engaged in the comp plan. We're part of the company, therefore an extension of the company. Is that pretty much what you're saying, Kevin?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I'm getting some questions here, like, can I say hip pain or can I say knee pain? I mean, if you're not, I don't know if putting it in up to their discretion on, is this chronic pain or just minor pain is smart. So how would you answer that question? Can I say hip pain? Because we've been teaching them, don't say the word pain. So tell me a little bit about that.
So it all depends on context. And when it comes to advertising, it's all about, what will the average consumer perceive, right? Which is very vague. And when it comes to pain, again, when we're talking about just general standard pains associated with just being an adult, totally fine. If we're talking about hip pain from an old shrapnel wound, that's different. So it really depends on the context. And the key word is chronic. If it's chronic, you can't. If it's general pain, then that's certainly fine. Okay.
Another question we're getting is drug testing, something we get a lot. Will this show up on a drug test or whatever? And, we have to be really careful because there's some exposure there, right? Because the truth is there's so many variables to a drug. How sensitive is the drug test? How much are you taking? Did you, take something else before you took the drug test and calling it CBD or whatever?
Right.
So what would you say your general, when someone asks a question to our field, like, will this show up on a drug test? What's the best verbiage for them to stay compliant and answer that question?
Well, hopefully, my understanding is if the product has less than 0.3% THC, you're fine, which yours meets that threshold. And if it's less than 0.3% THC, it shouldn't pop positive. In some cases, I've never seen it with you guys, but with other clients, I have heard of people popping positive on drug tests because the THC content was higher than expected because the testing wasn't appropriate. So that's kind of a fancy way of saying I can't really answer that question. It depends on how Green Compass is testing its products to ensure that the THC levels are low to where the testing isn't positive.
Okay. I know that obviously we have certificates of analysis and everything first. So I want the field to know that we do test that, but there's some exposure. Our impression is that there's some exposure there where if we say this won't show up on a drug test and then it does for whatever reason, the person's metabolism is different. The test was super sensitive. They've taken exorbitant amounts of it. We just don't want the exposure for them to turn around. They get fired from their job and come back to us and say, it's the CBD that, that kind of thing.
I've never seen it. Conceptually, I get it, but I've never seen it come back to really hurt the company or the field.
Okay. What's the exposure? This is a question from them. What's the exposure to the advocate should someone have an adverse reaction for whatever reason to the CBD? Meaning we sell them the CBD, they take it and whatever, they have some kind of reaction to it or allergy or choke on it or who knows, right?
Sure.
What kind of exposure does the advocate have in that situation?
Well, so the advocate is acting in his or her capacity as an independent contractor for the company. So the company is on the hook for all damages associated with its product. So the advocates, and look, in 15 years, I've never seen an advocate or a rep get into trouble based on adverse reactions. Yeah.
Perfect. What about posting third-party articles? I'm scouring the internet. I see a great article about how CBD helps with arthritis or anything like that. And I'm posting a third-party article, maybe something from a medical journal or something, some kind of an article. Is that compliant or non-compliant?
It depends on the context. So if it's somebody's personal Facebook page and they're not promoting Green Compass in the same post, then maybe they can get away with sharing a link and it'll be non-consequential. The problem that I'm concerned about is it's like flicking a domino, and there's other consequences. If you're sharing this content, it will lead to conversations about it, right? I mean, and you're welcoming discussions about the content of the article and the product that you're selling. So I tend to treat disease claims like it's just a pit of death, and you don't even want to get near it and peek over the edge.
Mm-hmm.
But that's me being a lawyer. I'm not in the field, and I certainly understand if the challenges people have in telling the story.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. I'm looking at some of these questions here. How about talking about some of the effects of, like, for example, epilepsy, right? So if someone has, let's say, a child that has epilepsy and they're talking about seizures, not talking about the word epilepsy, but just talking about how it's helping with minimizing the seizures, that kind of thing. Is that okay or not okay?
That's a disease. Yeah, epilepsy is a disease.
Even if I don't say the word epilepsy, it's because it's implied.
Well, okay. So that's a good point. So even when you talk about conditions of a common disease or common conditions of a disease, then that's considered a disease claim. And an example is seizures related to epilepsy. Severe joint discomfort is tied to arthritis. Inflammation is tied to arthritis. High cholesterol is not a disease by itself, but it's tied to heart disease. So it's all similar.
Okay. Okay. So the question is, so basically we can't share any testimonials or testimonializing you, or only testimonials utilizing non-diagnostic verbiage. So what I think that, the good news is our field really wants to be compliant, right? They really want to make sure that they're doing things right. They don't get flagged. Green Compass doesn't get flagged. So that's the good news. And there's so much, like, we get into the weeds, right? Well, what if I say this word instead of this word? Or so what would you just say when it comes to testimonials? What would you say is your general, advice about, I just don't want them to be like, well, wait a minute, I thought my testimonial was fine because it said this word and not this word. I just want a general kind of rule for testimonials. Because you mentioned at the beginning of your call, like, one of the benefits to Green Compass is that we're not saying, what can I get away with, right? What are the odds that this is going to get flagged? If there's any way for you to articulate, like, in general, please just avoid this, or if you're going to do this, make sure this is part of it, or, anything like that.
Sure. So if you're providing a testimonial, even if in your heart of hearts you feel like it treated a disease symptom like arthritis. Before I couldn't walk, I take the product, now I can walk. The government does not want you out there giving medical advice. And right or wrong, they want to push people with severe symptoms into the medical community. I'm not opining on whether that's appropriate or not. That's just the rule. So if you have a personal testimonial, you cannot state it if it references a disease condition. You can talk about improvements to mobility. You can talk about improvements to whatever else would be considered a structure function claim, sort of an improvement to your body, and elevated mood, or more energy, or increase in energy levels, or, supports a healthy immune system, that sort of stuff, perfectly fine.
Okay. Just one last question and we're going to wrap this up. Photos. So we have skincare now. And I know that a lot of companies post, like, before and after photos of, before I used this skincare, after I used this skincare. Okay, not okay.
It's perfectly fine. Yeah, skincare is relatively low risk. You just can't, skincare, the rules are a little different, whereas you can't imply that your product can change the structure of the skin, but just general beautifying before and after pictures. Now, if you show, like, before and after when we're talking about acne, well, that's a little different. But if it's just normal beautification, yeah, it's perfectly fine.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm sorry that we won't have time to get to all your questions. And also, it's really hard for Kevin, right? We put him on the spot with a real specific thing and without giving him a minute to think about it. So we can always talk about these offline, guys, if you have some specific questions. But I hope that you found this helpful. I did. And again, Kevin, I just really appreciate you taking the time to come on with us. I've been in this industry a long time, been with a couple different companies and never had the opportunity to just hear it from the horse's mouth like this. So I know that our field will find this really valuable, and this will be is being recorded. So it will be available for people to listen to it again, or for those that were unable to get on this morning, have a chance to check it out. So I'm going to stop.